Explanation of the poem Africa, written by David Diop. So already we made a discussion on the lines of this poem. If you missed that video, it is there in our description box. First of all, about David Mendes Diop. David Mendes Diop was a French West African poet, known for his contribution to the Negritude literary movement. You know, what is Negritude Movement? A literary learner should know what is Negritude Movement. So before moving into the poem, let's have a small discussion on Negritude Movement. The Negritude movement was influenced by the Harlem Renaissance, a literary and artistic flowering that emerged among a group of black thinkers and artists, including novelists and poets in the United States, in New York City, during the 1920s. The Negritude literary movement was born out of the Paris intellectual environment of 1930s and 1940s. It is a product of black writers joining together through the French language to assert their cultural identity. While in Paris, Diop became a prominent figure in Negritude literature. He died in the crash of Air France Flight 343 in the Atlantic Ocean off Dakar, Senegal, at the age of 33 in 1960. Now we can directly move into the poem Africa. For getting the notes on this particular topic, visit our website www.englishlecturenotes.com and select literature. There in drop-down menu you can find Africa. Africa is a poem written by the Afro-French poet David Diop. It was originally written in French, but later translated to English. The difference is that the French version has 24 lines while the English version has 23 lines. It is one of Diop's most famous poems, in which he explores the history of colonialism in Africa. He was known for his involvement in Negritude movement. His works reflect his anti-colonial stance. It is a patriotic poem that visualizes the bitterness of liberty. This poem shows his deep-seated anger in African slavery. It is a lament on the state of African continent. Africa, my Africa, Africa of proud warriors in ancestral savannas, Africa of whom my grandmother sings, on the banks of the distant river. Just read these lines. Here poem starts with the narrator reminiscing about Africa, which he has not yet seen, but knows from his grandmother's songs of his childhood. His use of the word distance shows how far he is now from Africa. Diop lived his life transitioning constantly between France and West Africa, from childhood onwards. He lived in France throughout his childhood. Despite not having been to Africa, he calls it my Africa to emphasize his sense of belonging. We can feel how much he misses Africa. Poet's agony is visualized in the repetition of the word Africa. Here he picturizes vivid scenery of Africa. Through these lines we will get an idea of the condition of Africa. Here he picturizes vivid scenery of Africa. Africa is a land of proud warriors in ancestral savanna. Here savanna means meadows or greenland. The African savanna ecosystem is a tropical grassland with warm temperature. He says his grandmother sings about Africa. The poet came to know about the history of Africa from his grandmother's songs. Grandmother's song shows the oral tradition of Africa. I have never known you, but your blood flows in my veins. Your beautiful black blood that irrigates the fields. The blood of your sweat. The sweat of your work. The work of your slavery. He says he had never known you means Africa. The reason is that the poet didn't spend much of his time in Africa. Despite he is away from Africa, he cannot deny how much Africa is a part of him and how much important for him. He describes the black blood which flows in his veins as a descendant of the continent. He hates the beauty of the color black, and these lines shows us how much he is proud in black color. He says it with pride that the African blood is flowing through his veins. He also says with stress that it is the blood and sweat of his people which is irrigating the fields of the colonialists without any benefit to the black people of Africa. The blood of your sweat, the sweat of your work, the work of your slavery worked for the benefit of colonizers. Here in above lines, you can find the word irrigation. Irrigation means the supply of water to the land or crop. Next lines. Africa, tell me Africa, is this your back that is unbent? This back that never breaks under the weight of humiliation. This back trembling with red scars and saying no to the whip under the midday sun. Diop goes on to urge the black African people to stand up to the humiliation and pain that they suffered in their own motherland. Africans were dehumanized and made to work out their bones on the white men's plantation. He shows the need to say no to the whips of the colonial masters who make them work under the hot midday sun, leaving ugly scars on their backs. Red scars represents the wounds received by Africans from their colonizers. He urges Africans to be strong. Let's have a look at the final part of the poem. But a great voice answers me, impetuous child, that tree, young and strong, that tree over there, splendidly alone amidst white and faded flowers. That is your Africa springing up anew, springing up patiently, obstinately, whose fruit bit by bit acquires the bitter taste of liberty. Here poet's query is answered by a grave voice. Grave voice is metaphorical. The tree, young and strong, represents the young African generation who are patiently but obstinately waiting for liberty. The tree is standing among the white and faded flowers. By this line, the poet means the colonialists who will fade in time, while the youthful Africans will grow and seize their freedom from the invaders. The tree represents Africa. It is a symbol of growth, and poet tries to show that despite all struggles, Africa continues to grow. The white faded flowers represents colonizers. Nevertheless, the poet is optimistic about the African future. He believes Africa still has a bright future. As a conclusion, we can say that this poem carries a nostalgic and optimistic tone and typifies the philosophy of the Negritude Movement. In short, the poem remains significant even after many years of independence of Africa from colonial rule, because the continent still experiences neo-colonialism up to this day. According to him, black people should not be under the illusion that political independence automatically translates into full independence from oppression and exploitation. Through this poem, he expresses his hope for a post-colonial Africa. Another thing about this poem is that this poem is a dramatic monologue where the speaker seems to be in conversation with Africa. The poem can be thematically divided into three parts: pre-colonial Africa, colonial Africa, post-colonial Africa. There are evidences of torture and exploitation in the poem. Oppression and humiliation were common practices in colonial time. They were used to force Africans work for colonizers without objection. Now we can discuss the poetic devices used in this poem. In the very first line, Africa, my Africa, Diop is having a conversation with Africa. Here in this line he used the poetic device apostrophe, in which a poet addresses a person or abstract idea as if it were really there. In lines like, I have never known you. Is this you, this back that is bent? He used personification in which non-human things are given human characteristics. In short, Africa, the continent, is anthropomorphized and treated like a human. These poetic devices help us appreciate Diop's internal connection to Africa, as an ancestor or as a family member. Diop's poem has a great sense of rhythm in both French and English. For this means for making rhythm, he used repetition, repeating words, phrases, lines, or stanzas. He also used alliteration, which is the repetition of consonant sounds at the beginning of words. Next, the repetition of consonants throughout the poem. Example, your beautiful black blood that irrigates the fields. Here, boo sound is repeating. Another literary device is anaphora, in which a word is repeated often at the start of a line or clause. In some places he used anadiplosis, in which the last part of the line becomes the first part of the next line. I think all of you understood this poem thoroughly. If you find this video informative, do subscribe us and comment the topic you need.